Welcome back to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb.
What was more surprising than October 7th? Swastikas being waved in Palestinian protest? Chants of "from the river to the sea"? FYI, there's only one river they mean, the Jordan River, and they mean the Mediterranean Sea, which is the opposite of a two-state solution. Free Palestine! Well, per Wikipedia, despite having a lefty founder, it is defined as an armed movement and community organization that opposes the very existence of Israel. Globalize the Intifada. The word translates to shaking off. And I don't mean Taylor Swift.
Right.
Which it seems mild compared to these other chants, but the entire globe shaking off of Jews, which is exactly what Palestinians were fighting in both Intifada, shaking the Jews off where? Off the face of the earth.
That's right.
And now we're calling for a caliphate. And Barrett, what does a caliphate mean?
Yeah, so there's been multiple caliphates throughout history, but it's where a religious Muslims lived under the leadership of the caliph, who was considered to be a successor to Muhammad. Now, that's where you get the difference between Sunni and Shia, was an argument over who was going to succeed Muhammad, whether it was going to be elected or whether it was going to be of relation. And it's the same thing that happened to the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church when there was a schism there, was over the right of succession. Obviously, the Catholics went to a voting as opposed to a direct descendancy of any of the apostles. But still, so women were oppressed under the caliphate because they were confined to the domestic sphere, and their role centered on support to their militant husbands and ideological upbringing of their children. And under the last caliphate, the Muslim empire went all the way into southern Spain, which is and ruled southern Spain for almost 700 years until the French helped push out the Muslims out of Spain. So you see a lot of archaeological, similarities to a lot of the Islamic temples and things like that. And just recently, on the southernmost point of Spain in Gibraltar, we have Saudi Arabia built a huge mosque there, and it's the largest mosque that's outside of the Middle East.
And so they really don't know what they're talking about, wanting a caliphate where women are limited to the home. I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Now, was it a violent regime?
Yeah. I mean, they conquered all of those territories in order to do it.
Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
And sadly, every day I get more and more surprised. I think I can't get any more surprised. It has even reached to small children, not just these punk college students. Small children, 5 years old, in Sydney, Australia, are being taught to do these same chants.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this as well, because children don't know any better. Now, you would say college students don't know any better either, because they're of the just the raw parroting of slogans and things like that. But children, small children, truly don't know any better. And so I think it's extremely wrong.
They don't even know their left foot from the right foot.
Yeah, so to get them to be tricking them into doing these chants and stuff like that, let's take a look.
We have a bit of a clip of that, and this particularly concerned me, Holly. I'd like to get your view on it, because we have young children, as young as 2 and 4, being encouraged to join this encampment and chanting anti-Israel slogans. Take a listen.
Intifada, Intifada, Intifada. The river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
5, 6, 7, 8, Israel is a terrorist state.
Holly, I know you've been very vocal on this issue of anti-Semitism, but children that age chanting for what we know was a wave of terror attacks.
Genocide, they're calling for there. They're calling for suicide bombers into Israel. That's what it actually means. And how that's not hate speech, how that is not child abuse.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, here you are, you're indoctrinating a small child who, again, doesn't know any better, and you're their parent, and they're looking up to you.
Yeah, we're doing such a bang-up job of ABCs and 2 + 2 is 4 that let's introduce some hate. I mean, come on. None of these people are educated, but unlike on the Azimuth podcast, you can no longer consider yourself uneducated like these protesters.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stop. I honestly don't know what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated.
Well, you guys are educated by watching Azimuth podcast.
That's right.
But, you know, none of these supposed places for higher learning are educating these people, much less standing up. These people have never been told no by parents, teachers, definitely not the deans. They don't tell people no. And I mean, why are they in charge? People in positions of authority are supposed to make decisions, and it takes a decision to tell someone no. I mean, think about it. If you just simply say yes, well, it was their idea.
Right.
So you're not making the decisions when you just say yes. I mean, why are you even there? Why are you making the $900,000 a year like President Gay of Harvard? Yes, everyone says she was fired. No, she lost her position as a dean or the president, and she still teaches classes making $900,000 a year, and people wonder
crazy.
why their tuitions are so high.
That's crazy. But you're right. They should have put a stop to this on day one. This goes exactly to a theme that we've talked about before, the broken windows, where you let little things slide, and then all of a sudden you start to see major crime. So the faculty should have absolutely just put the kibosh on this stuff from day one. Now, Columbia did do that. They had the NYPD come in, and obviously they were extremely heavily criticized. AOC said that this was a travesty and things like that. But still, Columbia let the protests go back, asked them to leave, didn't leave. So now they're committing a crime of trespassing, asked them to take their encampments down, didn't do it, gave them a suspense, did negotiations with them, and said, look, you know, we're going to have to start suspending people if you stay. If you leave now, we're going to take your name, you'll sign a piece of paper, and no harm, no foul. But you know, the response was that the Columbia students broke into and overtook the dean's office in the dean's building and held on to it and barricaded themselves in. So we have property damage. We have, you know, they're robbing people of the ability to do their administrative work. It's hard for students to be taking classes and final exams and things like that. And so, I mean, we have graduations that have been canceled. I mean, when's the last time that happened?
2020, so if my math serves me correctly, they would have been graduating high school where they missed another graduation. So, you know, I guess it is a good thing to have kindergarten graduation and 5th grade graduation and 8th grade graduation. I mean, maybe it finally serves a purpose.
Right. That's an excellent point. I mean, we kind of make fun of all these little graduations. Really, well, I kind of see it as really only 2, high school and then higher education.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, aren't we worried that if people say these chants, you know, say violent things enough times, they become more emboldened, other people start to believe them, they start to believe themselves, and then finally they're not satisfied with just talking. Oh, now they must act. And, you know, I mean, a girl has already been stabbed in the eye with a Palestinian flag, and isn't it just a guy's been tased? Isn't it just an amount of time before someone gets killed? Right.
So let's take a look at this tasing clip. He's asking people to stop.
He's walking away. It's assault. She should go to jail.
Yeah.
But, you know, everyone's like, oh, exercise their free speech. Well, my argument is, aren't people who are trying to go to class, people trying to do their jobs in the dean's building, like, isn't there the pursuit of happiness? Now, it's not the guarantee of happiness like these Marxists like to believe, that everything should be for free, but the pursuit of happiness. They're paying tuition. They're
Right.
like, shouldn't they be charged with like theft of services or something?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of opinion pieces that are written out there, and it's a lot of liberals that are saying this is what conservatives don't get about the protests. And as we can see, there is a difference. Obviously, the First Amendment guarantees you the right to protest. There is a difference in voicing your opinion and having your sign and doing those things, and or blocking and causing destruction and defacing property, spray painting statues, tearing down statues, preventing other students from going to their classrooms, preventing students from learning. This type of disruptive activity is not a protest. It's now crimes.
Yeah, I bet if someone blocked their entrance to a Taylor Swift concert, there would be a different spin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, when you think about it, if you are blocking the students from getting into their campus, if you're blocking students from going to class, if you're blocking a pathway, it's a crime, a misdemeanor called obstructing a highway. And you're like, but Barrett, there are no highways and cars that are here. Well, it comes from Scotland, where the Highlanders knew the highways and byways, i.e. paths, to get from point to point. And so if you're blocking someone's path, the highway, it's obstructing a highway. So you can actually commit this crime if you lie down in front of an elevator and people can't get on and off the elevator. You're obstructing a highway.
Stop blocking the grocery store aisles. It pisses me off.
I don't know if that counts, but still, how did we get here? How did this supposed rise in anti-Semitism, which I don't think there is. I think we're going to see that it was always here. People are just now emboldened enough to show their face.
Toddlers have gotten their way.
Right. So here's a clip that talks just that.
You can't fight it. What people keep saying, there's no rise in anti-Semitism. There's no rise in anti-Semitism. You just found out that you had lots of anti-Semitic people in your society who've been anti-Semitic this entire time. There's no rise. So I don't understand what people are talking about when they say, we're going to fight anti-Semitism. The only way to fight anti-Semitism is to destroy identity politics and the progressive project. And the reason is very simple. And this is something that my friend Eric Weinstein explained very well when we had him on our show with Sam Harris. The reason for left-wing anti-Semitism, which is, I think, what we're probably talking about to some extent outside the kind of more religious-driven element of this.
He's referring to is the Jews are not considered to be part of that victim part of the identity politics. Like blacks are victims and Palestinians are victims, but Jews are well off, so they're not part of the victim class. And so that's what he means by the identity politics.
Right. And we also have a clip of Yuri Bezmenov, who is a former KGB agent, talking about how the Soviet Union started to infiltrate ideology into the American education system.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. This is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards.
Lack of moral standards, meaning taking God's prayer out of school. And I love how he mentioned having despite having access information like
Right.
we have the internet, but
Right.
yet we're so stupid.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we're talking about this and you hear students, college students that talk about favorably about Marxism and socialism, that is because that has been taught to them. They did not have a realization. And so what has happened is you have, in the 80s, the KGB doing this, and you have a KGB agent saying exactly how they did it, and you have, taken Generation X, who has become professors themselves, and they have learned this material, and they're now teaching it on. And so it is self-replicating to college students if they don't already have a strong family fundamental moral code, a strong family fundamental appreciation of capitalism, and you heard him. They take it in the soft, squishy minds of college students.
Yep. Well, let's see. One of the protesters who locked themselves in Hamilton Hall at Columbia, she apparently did not have a good family upbringing to
Right.
tell her no, because she's demanding the university help feed the protesters.
Right.
This very protester is a paid instructor and PhD candidate studying theories of the imagination and poetry as interpreted through a Marxian lens. That's actually what she does.
Right. Well, I mean, so not only is she disrupting the university, but she forgot to bring her lunch pail with her. And one of her big complaints, and her name is Joanna King-Slutsy. One of her big complaints is saying that people and students paid for a meal plan. Therefore, the university needs to allow Uber Eats to come in. My thing is you paid for a meal plan, leave the protest, and go to the cafeteria.
Yeah, it's not Uber Eats.
I mean, give me a break. But she's the real thing. It says taking classes on Taylor Swift at Harvard. Long are the days being required to study Hebrew and Greek to graduate Harvard. I believe you said one of your first classes you had to learn how the Taco Bell dog was racist.
Yes. So none of this is new. I mean, again, with CRT feeds right into victimology, and that comes from Marxism. One of my very first assignments. First day of college was to write an essay about how the Taco Bell dog is racist. I'm like, really? I've been working my butt off for 12 years to get to this? Where's the Shakespeare? Where's the higher learning in this?
Well, we kind of deserve this. We did it to ourselves. We truly have. We've lowered standards. We've let everyone in and every idea, and we've just ignored the warnings that have been, on the field for years and years and decades. And so this was the foreign minister of the United Arab Emirates, UAE, is giving us a warning. This is from 7 years ago.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Yeah, I love it how, let me instead of Arabic, let me speak this in English. Well, I've got a translation. No.
English is great.
His English is probably better than most of the people in Mississippi, I mean, honestly.
Or maybe Columbia, for that matter.
Exactly. But still, he's like, no, I'm saying in English so that there's nothing missed in the translation. And he is prophetic. I mean, This is 7 years ago, and we're seeing this. We truly are.
Yeah. But, don't get too depressed. There is a little glimmer of hope. In Arizona State, we have frat boys taking down protesters' items. I guess they call them the good old boys for a reason.
Look at these! Right.
We've got the white frat boys throwing away protesters' belongings, and we've got the pigs in brown doing nothing about it, although we are being forced off campus. Pigs in brown.
And they're not the only ones. At UNC, there were some fraternity young men taking down the Palestinian flag and raising the United States flag. Good job, fellas. So, you may ask, why do we care about these protests? They're at colleges, and no one really believes that universities can somehow end this war because, you know, punks are throwing temper tantrums. Well, we should care because we can no longer say, oh, they'll just grow up and they'll come to their senses when they have a job and pay taxes. But, you know, these people have gotten into corporations, made DEI policies, they gained tenure, started teaching, they become lawyers and then judges and senators and make the policies. So these future teachers and politicians hate Jews. And then it will be the Christians. And then they'll turn on each other because the left eats its own.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting to talk about that it's just this cycle. And it's just like the KGB former KGB agent said that you know they're going to create this cycle where generations of college students eat this ideology. And you know there was a famous quote. It was attributed to Khrushchev, but it's been debunked that Khrushchev didn't say it. But it was basically, you can't expect Americans to go from capitalism to communism. They just won't do it. But you can feed them little bites of socialism until they wake up and realize they have communism.
Good quote.
And so again, it was attributed to Khrushchev, but it's been debunked. He didn't say it, but still, some Soviets said it.
Well, I'd like to close off with, and yes, I know the Israel-Palestine wars has been talked about ad nauseum, and the college protests is being talked about everywhere. But we have to talk about it because 90 years ago, in the 1930s, it wasn't being talked about. And so I'm going to say a famous quote. First, they came for the trade unionist, but I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the communist. I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to fight. And finally, evil prevails when good men do nothing. So what can you do? Indoctrinate your kids. Teach them right from wrong. Go to church. Educate people in the right ways where you are able to. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. With everything going on in the world, let's get high on Smith Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is my husband, Barrett McNabb.
So Rapper AFROMAN has changed one of his songs to Hunter Got High and released it, and it is absolutely hysterical. So we're going to do a reaction to this. We are going to need to stop it at every verse because we don't want to get a copyright strike, and we want to make sure that we're able to provide commentary. But we'll provide a link to the full video unobstructed below. Let's listen.
Shout out to Bass Records. Hey, yo, Hunter. Roll up another one of them congressional blunts, brother.
So already it's starting off. You got a guy, playing Hunter Biden who looks very, very close. And then also you see a guy playing a Joe Biden on there as well. I thought they did, a great job on their character selection. So let's keep going.
He was gonna get his laptop fixed, but Hunter got high. He wasn't gonna show all them dick pics, but Hunter got high. He should've let Hillary bleach his whole hard drive. Yeah, Hunter got high. Hunter got high.
far this is hysterical.
Like it's like, ooh, you might want to watch out. You mentioned Hillary.
Yeah, exactly.
In case you don't know, Hillary had private servers with government emails on them, and then, she got called out, and before people could investigate, she did bleach spit on it and knocked cell phones with hammers and whatnot. So that's what that's referencing to.
Yeah, I mean, they should have, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, type of thing. So, I mean.
What do Christmas ornaments and Jeffrey Epstein have in common?
I don't know.
They don't hang themselves.
Okay, that's good. So, yeah, I mean, already we have, the hard drive that with all the pornography and that of Hunter on them. But still, I mean, give me a break. This is hysterical.
He wasn't gonna mess with the hoes, but Hunter got high. He was gonna take them all out on the boat, but Hunter got high. He's the smartest man Joe ever knew in his life. Yeah, till Hunter got high. Hunter got high. Hunter got high. La, da, da, da.
So, yeah, they're again referring to the pictures on his laptop, but he spent a lot of money.
Right.
So they did some investigation on his 2016 to 2018 tax returns. He paid $10,000 for sex club membership.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's a lot. And then he also referenced that, he's the smartest man Joe's ever known in his life. President Biden has been quoted as saying that his son Hunter's the smartest man he's known in his life. However, the owner of Burisma, a company that Hunter Biden worked for, said that Hunter is dumber than his dog.
Well, the interesting thing is well, I don't know. How smart is he? He's gotten gig after gig after gig and gotten away with so much so far. He might be actually pretty smart. Who knows? But I mean, obviously, the federal crimes are catching up with him, but still.
He was gonna go visit his dad, but Hunter got high. He thought he had a secret stash, but Hunter got high. The White House got shut down. We all know why. Yeah, Hunter got high. Hunter got high. Hunter got high.
It's amazing that after a small investigation, the Secret Service just closed it and said nothing to see here.
A bag of cocaine found in the White House. It's supposed to be like top-notch security, and they just don't know why this bag of cocaine got here. It's a plastic baggie. Is that a good surface for fingerprints?
Yeah, it is. Actually, it is. They should be able to lift something out there because nobody's going to wear gloves.
Yeah, walked in with gloves into the White House. I think they noticed.
Yeah. I mean, so, we got engaged at the White House, which is a fun story, and we'll tell it later. But still, we had to go through security, and I had a female classmate of mine in the Command and General Staff College smuggle in the engagement ring on her finger. And then once we got through security and got into the White House, she handed it back to me. But still, there was a lot of security going through there. Now, I'm sure Hunter's probably not going through the pedestrian entrance.
Not a smut gate.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's keep going.
He never could pack what the fuck. Hunter got high. Now he gets $500,000 and up. Damn, that's high.
That's high to the buck. That's higher than me.
Biden never used to start with BUI. Yeah, till Hunter got high. Hunter got high. Hunter got high.
So, yeah, Hunter Biden took up painting for a bit, and it was no little side hustle on Etsy either. I mean, his paintings sold for a total of $1.38 million.
That is crazy.
And with just one selling for $875,000.
That's crazy. Now, I think the biggest problem
That's a good side gig.
Yeah, it's an inside gig. The biggest problem was that it was anonymous buyers that were doing it.
No, they were all purchased by...
Really?
By President Biden's supporters.
Okay.
Every single one.
So they wanted to make sure that they got, the influence that they paid for.
You Ukraine wasn't part of the plan till Hunter got high. China wasn't that big of a fan till Hunter got high. He wasn't gonna split it all with the old big guy. Yeah, till Hunter got high, till Hunter got high, Hunter got high.
So, yeah, when they say the old big guy, that's referencing an associate proposing 10% for the big guy in a Chinese energy firm deal.
Yeah, and I believe in a text message, he also said, I'm sitting with the big guy, meaning that he was in the room as he was making some of these deals.
In that text message, I'm sitting here next to my father.
Okay.
And something about, and with my forever ability to hold a grudge.
Right.
Basically towards you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, and Biden has said that he doesn't recall.
He wasn't gonna go to court, but Hunter got high. He never been indicted before, but Hunter got high. His attorney's out smoking a bowl, and we all know why. Yeah, cause Hunter got high, Hunter got high, Hunter got high.
So this verse is referencing the House Oversight Committee trying to get Hunter Biden to testify.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, the also the same thing, you know, for the indictment on the gun charges and the tax fraud, the gun charges, you know, he was going to court and the DA was going to waive and not prosecute on one of them. The judge said, hey, look, this doesn't, you know, are you saying that he has complete immunity from any future crimes, including this other crime, the gun charge? And the prosecutor said, no, we're still thinking about that charge as well. And then that's when all deals were off the table. Hunter left. He's like, I'm pleading not guilty to everything. But it's amazing when somebody goes to and changes their plea from not guilty to guilty. I mean, you were going to plead guilty, which means you know that you're guilty, and now you're changing it to not guilty. Come on now. You were about to say you were guilty. But let's keep going.
He was making 80 G's a month, but Hunter got high. On a job brother ain't never done, Hunter got high. He got more LLCs than John Gotti's ex-wife. Yeah. Hunter got high. Hunter got high. Hunter got high.
Please disregard my last statement is what flashed on the screen. He should have said that about underneath the Hillary comment.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch your back, dude. So the 80 G's a month, that's referencing.
I wouldn't mind making that.
Yeah, really. I'd like that a year. But Burisma paid him, the Ukrainian company, paid him $80,000 a month. Now, how do you even spend that much money a month? Well, he spent $11,500 for 2 nights with an escort. And just between 2016 and 2018, he spent $1.6 million withdrawing from ATM machines alone.
Wow.
So, yeah, apparently he needed it. And then I had to look this one up. John Gotti's ex-wife. John Gotti was the head of the Gambino crime family. So that's why he said, please disregard my last statement because I don't want to get, fed to the fishes.
Right. I don't blame him. Let's finish this up.
His cousin was never a pimp till Hunter got high. He had the best friends that money could rent, but Hunter got high. Just imagine if he wasn't rich and so damn white. Yeah, the cops would raid his house, eat his lemon pound cake, disconnect his cameras and steal his money.
So he made a couple references in that last verse as well. His cousin was never a pimp. Well, he asked his cousin to set him up with Nikola Peltz, who is 25 years younger than he is, and was married to David Beckham's son. So he asked for that connection, and then Best Friends Money could rent. Well, I mean, his dad has some good friends. Kevin Morris, who's a Hollywood attorney, bought his paintings and paid $2 million in back taxes of Hunter Biden's. I mean, that's a really good friend right there. I mean, come on, friend, step up. And then imagine if he wasn't rich and so damn white. Well, I take that as a reference to the ABC interview he had with A.B. Robach, who asked directly if he would have had the same life and opportunities if his name had not been Biden, and he pretty much flat out said yes. So even he kind of knows it.
Right.
And then he mentions Lemon Pound Cake. That's a title to an album that he made in 2023.
Oh, really? Okay. I was wondering about that. All right.
Yeah. So
okay.
Great song. I love it.
Yeah.
Now the libs
Two
are
thumbs
just libs are just like, is it conservative? He's been reading too much conservative media. Well, I say let's support him. Go to merch, get his merch at basterrecords.com/pages/artist.
Yeah.
And we'll put a link to the YouTube video, and it'll have the link in that description as well.
Yeah, we saw this, and we both laughed out loud when we first saw it, and we said we have got to do a review of this song. But still, you know what you're saying. The liberals are really mad about this because liberals don't have a sense of humor. Republicans and conservatives get made fun of all the time, and we kind of take it and don't really complain
if
that
the
much.
Trump joke's good and true, I'll
Exactly.
have laughed at plenty of them.
Anyway, you have got to realize that this is a perfect spoof, and you know he did a great job here. So thank you so much for watching Azimuth Podcast.
Hi everyone, thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. Could a second civil war break out in the United States? A24's release of Civil War 2 weeks ago discusses just that. Welcome back to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb. So, Barrett, what did you think about the movie?
Well, I knew that we wanted to do a review of the movie, so I was trying to enjoy it. But I was also taking notes because we only had one shot to look at it to get as much information as possible. So I really want to see it again so that I can do it, but I'm not going to pay $30 for us to go to the movie theater to see it again. But you know, it has a lot of great character and story building in the slow moments and great camera work and sound in the action moments. And I really am super impressed with it. You know, the film had a budget of $50 million. And which is a fraction of budgets that most movies have these days. And it's already done almost $90 million in sales, so that they have almost a $40 million profit. But you would not be able to tell that it was a low-budget film just because of all of the great camera work. In fact, some of the actors in some of the scenes where there's lots of people milling around, they didn't even know where the cameras were. Right. Because people were kind of hiding, and a lot of people had cameras, and so they didn't know which ones were actually the real movie cameras. But what did you think, Kimberly?
It was interesting, a little confusing about how California and Texas would get together. I think that's what a lot of people's first thoughts are. And then I was like, who are these men with funny rainbow hair and nail polish and red glasses that look like they belong on the Queen and Alice in Wonderland? I mean, so it was a little confusing, but right. I mean, I thought it was well done. But I imagine with your military strategy, brain, you probably read way more into it than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I was really, like I said, I was trying to not only enjoy the movie, but I was also trying to take notes and to be able to talk about it later on and to see what some of the hidden meanings were. I think this would be something that's going to be dissected for a while, and there's obviously a lot of YouTube videos that are out there about the movie, and we went and saw it together, and we both had pen and paper, and we're taking notes and stuff like that. But let's talk about the premise. We came into the movie in the midpoint to end of what turns out to be a major civil war where the United States has fractured into three coalitions. You have the Western forces led by Texas and California, the Florida Alliance, and the remaining United States of America. So a group of journalists want to take a road trip from New York City to Washington, D.C. in order to interview the president. So let's go ahead and watch the preview if you haven't already seen it.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
So already we're seeing, some of the things that this particular president is doing, to American citizens, and so we can see already there's this foreshadowing. This is probably a bad guy. Let's keep going.
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death.
Bloody.
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
So, obviously that scene with what you're talking about, the guy with the rose-colored glasses, pink glasses, whatever, that's been well played on YouTube and things like that because it's such a dramatic, question to ask. What kind of American are you? And so that was just a really dramatic scene, and it's obviously a lot longer and more violent than what it's showing in the preview. But still, we're seeing this confrontation, and it's obviously there's a civil war going on, and so which side are you supporting?
Oh my God!
Get in the car! Get in the car! Move, move, move!
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go, 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 go!
God bless America.
So we paused it a couple of times because we didn't want to get a copyright strike on YouTube. Although this being a commercial, I would think that A24 would definitely be loving the fact that they're getting free advertising, with us projecting their commercial to our YouTube audience. But still, we wanted to make sure that
you never know.
You never know. And so we did stop it a couple of times.
So who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? I mean, that's a hard question to kind of figure out in this movie. So here's what we know. The president is in his third term and has conducted airstrikes on his very own civilians. And who has alluded to or threatened F-15s?
Yeah. So do you remember this?
I mean, if you need to work about taking on the federal government, you need some F-15s. You don't need an AR-15. I am going to get assault weapons banned. I did it once. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. So, I mean, here we go. We have Biden himself saying and alluding to, F-15s if you're trying to take on the federal government, which could be, that he's thinking about, using them on us. I mean, who knows? I mean, why did he make that comment? But we took some notable screenshots of the trailer, and again, we couldn't take screenshots of the movie because obviously you're not allowed to record a movie, in the movie theater and things like that. But we took some screenshots from the trailer, and it will be able to provide context to you. So the first is the television reflection, and we're going to put these photographs up. The first is the television reflection on the window showing the 19 states that succeeded. And so it's, it basically it lays it out of who the 19 states are, who's the different factions. And so I studied the photo for a long time and recreated the map to show you what it looks like. And we're putting it up here so you can see what the Western forces, the Florida Alliance, and then the Loyalist states are. And I shaded them for ease of use. But we can see, where the conservative and it's interesting because they kind of jumbled it up a little bit because they're in the red area are definitely states that are conservative, but who knows? So anyway, this is the first kind of clue. Next, we don't see any unit patches on any of the uniforms in the movie. However, in the trailer, we see one unit insignia on a CH-47 Chinook helicopter, and we have it up here. And in the movie, now you see lots of close-ups of the insignia, but it's the 1st Cavalry Division out of Fort Hood, Texas. And it's the unit that's leading the assault on Washington, D.C. And so we don't get to see, again, you come in at the middle or tail end of the Civil War, so you don't get to see the lead up of how that happened, but still, we do, that's the only insignia, and it's painted on the front of the helicopter. And then finally, we see the Boogaloo Boys fighting the U.S. government forces wearing their Hawaiian shirts under their body armor, right? And the Boogaloo Boys are right-wing leaning, and this, they are wanting and believe in that there will be a civil war. So with them fighting the government forces, it leads me to believe that it is a Democrat president, and the conservative forces are seeking to eliminate him and his war crimes. I mean, he's already serving a 3rd term, which is against the Constitution. He's been doing airstrikes on civilians, and so that's kind of what led me to believe that it's a Democrat liberal president, and the conservatives are fighting to depose him.
Yeah, I've listened to other reviews of the movie, and they're like, well, they don't really make it obvious, if the president is Democrat or Republican, if he's like Trump or Biden. And I think you and I have come up with some good arguments for one way or the other.
Right. Now the crew and the director didn't want it to be obvious
anyway.
and because they didn't want to alienate half of their potential audience.
Exactly.
So they
buy movie tickets.
Yeah, exactly. So they said that that it's not political and it was supposed to be ambiguous on purpose. But if you start looking at the evidence, it shows that or a reasonable person would be able to believe that it is conservatives fighting against liberals in this particular thing.
Well, so for a more generic movie review, the main cast has Kirsten Dunst playing as an experienced combat photojournalist named Lee Smith, along with her reporter-producer Joel, played by Wagner Mora, and Stephen McKinley as an older reporter named Sammy. They even have Nick Offerman from Parks and Recreation playing the president.
Which I thought was an interesting... He cleans up well from his days on Parks and Recreation, but he does a good job of playing the president. But all of those people that you just listed, they get the most screen time. But I think the main character is a young aspiring photographer named Jesse, played by Kaylee Spaney. And I think in looking at the various characters, I truly think, even though she gets the least amount of not the least amount of screen time, but obviously the big name actors get more screen time than her. But I think the story is truly about her.
Right. Yeah, Michael Knowles did a review, and he described it as a road trip story.
Sure.
But you say it's a story of two evolutions.
Yeah, I mean, so you have the the little girl, the aspiring photographer, she starts off, in a scene where she's exposed to dead people, and she just freezes. And she's so scared. She doesn't take out her camera to take any photographs. And we see her progress from being that scared, aspiring photographer into a risk taker and a battle-hardened photojournalist. And so really it's seeing her progression as she goes through. And then obviously the backstory is the progression that the United States is going through, via the Civil War and the combat and stuff like that.
Yeah. What were some odd things that you thought that were said? Like for me, the older gentleman said that, the Florida Alliance and Texas and California, all these other entities, once they do overthrow D.C., they'll kill each other. What do you think?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, obviously they're different factions, and I think you said that they'll start fighting each other. So you have the Florida Alliance, which, if you looked in the map, and we'll put it up again, Texas is bordering the Florida Alliance, and it's geographically separated from all of the other states that are in the Western forces, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, it's interesting that, Texas didn't join the Florida Alliance, from the outright. But again, I think this was deliberate to kind of jumble up what would normally be blue states and red states in order to try and stave off any politicization of what it is.
Right, yeah, exactly, because otherwise California and Texas don't make any sense.
Yeah, they're not kind of strange bedfellows in this film.
And then, spoiler alert, but in one of the earlier scenes, someone runs into a crowd that's waiting for water waving an American flag and, blows up the crowd. And it takes place in New York City. And so it's like, wait a minute, that is the United States. So why would they bomb themselves?
Yeah, that was again, it was a suicide bomber, and New York State is part of the Loyalist states. So it really did seem that was disjointed.
If anyone's divided, I would say it's the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
And then another question we had was Kirsten Dunst's character was credited for rising to fame, after the Antifa massacre, and they didn't expound upon that. Did they do the massacring, or were they massacred?
Yeah. So I mean, we don't know, which way that goes. Again, the movie wants to keep that ambiguous, but still, that's how she got her chops or famous, was for reporting on that. Now we're going to get into some spoilers, and if you don't want to hear them, skip ahead to the strategy of the war, which is coming up. And I'm going to try and figure out how to do a timestamp so you can just skip that. So again, we're going to be talking about some spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and skip ahead now, or pause, or if you want to hear them, go ahead. But we'll just give you a couple seconds. Okay.
Yeah. Another thing Michael Knowles said, the wokest element of the movie is that the journalists are not partisan. Kirsten Dunst's character says our only job is to take photos, but I mean, we kind of beg to differ on that.
Yeah, so there was a scene where, as they're camping down and bedding down for the night in their truck, they can see fighting and tracers going off in the distance. And one of the things that I found was interesting is, just from a military standpoint, every country uses different colors of tracers. And so it was interesting to see that it was two sets of red tracers firing at each other. And red is the tracer color that the United States uses. So it's really kind of interesting. The Russians use green tracers. Germany uses silver. I believe British use blue. And so, it was interesting to see two sets of red tracers being fired at each other, which obviously it's American on American. The next day, they go and actually go up to the fighting. They said, look, we want to check this thing out. The journalist he's an action junkie. You can clearly tell he's excited. Kirsten Dunst is, she's kind of hard to read, actually, because she's kind of, it's like she has lost her passion, and she is just taking photographs as they come. Doesn't matter who it is. But after the Boogaloo Boys battle with the government forces and the Boogaloo Boys win, he is just having a great time talking about the fighting. Oh yeah, you did this. This was cool when you did this, and he's smiling. And so it leads me to believe that he's not partisan, that he actually likes the right wing group, because he's really kind of palling around with them.
Right. Well, also another thing I noticed was once I figured out who the men with the weird colored hair and the nails are working for the United States side, and yeah, who's going to align more in D.C.? Not so straight cut people these days.
Right. I mean, well, and what they were
straighter cut people that were on the Texas, the Western Forces side.
Yeah, and what he was doing is he was covering up a war crime that was burying civilians that they had massacred. Yep. I mean, it was
going back to the airstrike.
Exactly.
Also, one of the earlier scenes, they're really highlighting how many tents, like, homeless people live in New York City, and who has really increased homelessness and immigrants to come here? President Biden. So
right.
I would say hints at some partisanship.
And this is kind of interesting. As Lee was asking Jesse, or trying to toughen her up, to be a better combat photojournalist, Jesse asked Lee if she would take a photo of her death in order to capture it and to take advantage of it. And Lee said, yeah, if you die, I'm taking a picture of it. And the interesting flip side is that Jesse took a photo of Lee's death as Lee was saving her in the end scene of the final battle for the White House. And, it was interesting because, as I alluded to, Jesse kept becoming more and more risk-taking as the film progresses on. And so this particular last shot that she was going to get, she went straight up into a corridor where the Western Forces and the Secret Service are having a shootout in the White House, and she's standing in the middle of the corridor trying to take a photograph, and Lee jumps out and pushes her down and then just stands there.
Yeah, that's like, wouldn't you do like a swan dive, which would send both of you to the ground?
Yeah, at the bare minimum, you do a tackle and you take everybody to the ground. But she just stands there, and obviously she's a target and the Secret Service shooter, and she dies. And as she's falling, Jesse is taking photographs of the expression of death on her face. And so it was kind of this little flip, and I'd say the culmination of the character progression of Jesse. But again, the movie never explicitly says what the cause of the war was, and so you're kind of, wondering, California and Texas, how would they team up?
Just a false throw to like, oh, we're not partisan.
Right.
And speaking of partisanship, the scene with the Secret Service person who was trying to negotiate like where the president can go.
The surrender, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, oh, let us go to a neutral country like Greenland or Alaska.
Yeah, that was really kind of interesting. So obviously Alaska has nobody's paying attention to them all the way up there. So they I guess are their own thing. The movie really kind of just takes account for the continental United States, but still, this is a great movie. Again, I want to see it again, just because I didn't get to catch everything because I was just trying to absorb everything. Well, the interesting thing is the left is obviously claiming this is President Trump, the right saying it's Biden. Again, I think we've made a great case to say it's the left.
It's Biden, yes, and also there's no mention of any allies coming to help us, and I would say President Biden has given our allies the signal like, hey, we're not going to come help you, or we're going to talk both sides out of our mouth, trying to appease everyone. And guess what happens when you try to appease everyone, like Israel and Palestinians? You usually end up disappointing everybody. And another thing I'd like to note, for the left who claims, oh, DEI, diversity, blah, blah. No. Who had more diversity on their fighting forces? The United States side had nothing that we saw but white men wearing weird colored hair and fingernail polish. The Western Forces had blacks, had black women, had white women, had Asians.
Yeah.
All without being forced by someone else to do it.
Yeah. overall, I thought it was a great movie. One of the interesting things is continuing the trend of having, action scenes and then the music not really syncing with the action scene, almost kind of like Reservoir Dogs. I think Quentin Tarantino was one of the first directors to do this style, to have a serious, dramatic scene, but then have happy music, playing. And so it was definitely a very liberal use, having desynchronized music that doesn't fit the scene in order to make the scene more dramatic. And I thought that was a good use.
Right. 1st Cavalry attacking Washington, D.C. Tell us, how would that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and something we tried figuring out. As a retired Army officer, I really kind of not only looked at the movie from an artistic point of view, but strategically, how would this actually work? And it's just an amazing thought process, and I was really giddy to kind of get after this and really kind of break this down militarily, how something like this would happen. So obviously we're going to put up the map of the United States again that shows the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance and then the Loyalist United States. Now, I'm going to put another picture up and show you real world where the active duty big boys are in the United States Army and the Marine Corps. Now, obviously, there are a ton of military installation, reserve installations, National Guard installations, but I'm a one-person show in doing the editing and coming up with this stuff, and so I had to take an appetite suppressant on some of it. So what we're showing is the big division and a couple specialized battalion level units. Again, there are hundreds more units that would be involved in this because a division or a corps has hundreds of enablers. But still, just to look at the feasibility. What I did is I concentrated on just the continental United States. So there are forces overseas that are in locations like Okinawa and Korea. We have forces overseas in the Middle East and in Europe. And I made the assumption that during the Civil War they wouldn't be able to come back to the United States. And so, in fact, I would say that the very first thing that North Korea would do if the United States actually had a civil war would be to attack South. And there are 2 brigade combat teams of the 2nd Infantry Division that are stationed there that would probably be not receiving any reinforcements and things like that. So that war would probably be raging on. There's an assumption that Russia would attack NATO because the United States wouldn't be able to reinforce NATO. And I don't know when the last time we did a reforger exercise to do a reinforcement of Germany. And so anyway, I think the whole world would go crazy if the United States own military units were tied up fighting themselves. But I just kind of want to break it down. So if we look at the Western forces, and they're in blue. And so we'll start at the northwest at Fort Lewis, Washington. So we have the 7th Infantry Division that's located there. And I know these icons, they look like a child drew them and they don't make any sense, but militarily these are the correct NATO icons, and military people would be able to see these and go, oh yeah, what it is. So I'm going to explain it to you. To military people, you probably already immediately saw these and know what they are. But the unit at the very top there has a rectangle, which shows that, and it's in blue, which shows that it's a friendly unit, and it has an X and a circle and 3 little circles. So that is Stryker infantry, and a Stryker is a medium vehicle that has wheels and can go really quickly across any kind of terrain, but really works well on roads. And so the 2 X's on top denote that it is a division-sized element. Divisions have anywhere from 18 to 25,000 troops in it. And then below that we have a single X, and that's a brigade-sized element, so about 3,000, 3,500 people in it, and that is 2nd Brigade, or sorry, the remaining brigade of the 2nd Infantry Division that's in the United States. Remember, the other 2 are in South Korea. And then we have the rectangle with the X and the R and the 2 little humps. That is 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. And so that's one of the units that I elected to go down to the battalion level because they're a specialized infantry unit that's airborne capable and specialized in raids. And then moving down south to California, we have the 1st Marine Division. That's what those two X's are. So the Marine Corps has 4 divisions. One's on the East Coast, one's on the West Coast, one is stationed in Okinawa, and one is stationed in Louisiana, the headquarters unit, but the units are spread out all over the place. So I just concentrated on the 1st and 2nd Marine Division because, again, I don't think anybody's coming back from overseas. And then as we move into the last set of units in Texas, we have 1st Armored Division near El Paso. That's at Fort Bliss, and that's the rectangle with just the circle in it. And so super powerful division comprised mostly of tanks. Then moving over into Fort Hood to the east, you have the 1st Cavalry Division. And it's important to note that in the preview and in the movie, it is the only unit that actually has its emblem or its insignia shown. All of the other units either have been sterilized or they're not wearing their patches. The only unit shown in the entire movie is the 1st Cavalry Division. And then you go south, and that is the 3rd Cavalry Division. It used to be the 3rd Armored Cavalry Division, but in 2018 they had a change of mission and they changed from tanks to Strykers. So again, usage of the Strykers. And then we'll move into the Florida Alliance, and that is the area in green. And we see, I'm gonna get to Fort Campbell last on this, but we see at Fort Benning and Fort Stewart combined, we have the 3rd Infantry Division mechanized, and then we have 2 Ranger battalions: the 1st Ranger Battalion at Hunter Army Airfield and the 3rd Ranger Battalion at Fort Benning, Georgia. Now, if we go up to the north in Tennessee, Kentucky, we see the 101st. And the 101st is the Fort Campbell straddles 50% of the base is in Kentucky and 50% of the base is in Tennessee. And now the vast majority of the soldiers live on the Tennessee side, but honestly, I flipped a coin on whether it was going to be heads. The 101st Airborne Division Air Assault was going to be part of the United States forces, or if it was going to be part of the Florida Alliance. I flipped the coin. It came up tails, and so Tennessee got the 101st, i.e. the Florida Alliance. Now, the last set we have is the units that are part of the Loyalist states, and we have in Colorado, we have Fort Carson, we have 4th Infantry Division, and it's a Stryker Infantry Division. So again, that medium division with wheeled vehicles. And then we go to Fort Riley, Kansas, and we have the Big Red One, the 1st Infantry Division, and it's a mechanized division. Now, again, I don't rag on me that there are lots and lots and lots of brigade separates. There's military police battalions, there's artillery battalions, and military police brigades, combat engineer brigades. I got it. But again, we just had to take an appetite suppressant, for this. But it's a mechanized infantry division that's located smack dab in the center of the country. As we go further to the east, in New York State is Fort Drum. We have the 10th Mountain Division, and they're up there. They love their cold weather and their cold weather training, but they're hanging out up there in New York. And in the beginning of the movie, it takes place in New York as well. And then moving to the south, we have the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and we don't really know what North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia and the Florida Alliance are doing. There is a small portion in the actual movie itself where they talk about the Florida Alliance. Either, I couldn't catch it because it happened so quickly, either they were attacking South Carolina and North Carolina in order to get them to be part, or they were negotiating with them. And so it was unclear, but the 82nd Airborne Division's there at Fort Bragg, and then the 2nd Marine Division is stationed in North Carolina as well. And so as we were moving these around, I really kind of thought that if the Florida Alliance is attacking South Carolina and North Carolina, those units would need to be remaining in place, and so to defend that side of the conflict. And so, I really didn't move them around a lot. But Kimberly, what do you think about some of the icons that we have now after I explained them?
Well, yeah, the ones with the shapes are exactly. how I would do it.
Well, so yeah, so obviously whenever you have a military map, you don't have the colored icons, like the pictures of the unit symbols. I did that so that everybody could see kind of what I was talking about. But still, you know, how is it that 1st Cavalry Division goes from Fort Hood, Texas, all the way to Washington, D.C.? Well, I thought about
surrounded.
it. Yep. Yeah. And surround Washington, D.C. And I really thought about it. And this is my best take on how I would fight this if I were in charge of the Western Alliance. Again, the Western Forces. The Florida Alliance, we hear about them very little. They don't participate in the movie. We never see any of the units, and we just hear them mentioned a couple of times. So really, I'm just concentrating on the Western Forces and how I would do this. So we're going to go step by step through this. All right, Phase 1, the first part of Phase 1, so Phase 1 Alpha, this is the Fort Sumter moment, where the Western forces are making the very first move in order to secede from the United States. And so I have 2nd Ranger Battalion doing a parachute assault into Fort Riley, Kansas, and taking, we'll see what they're going to do in a second, but I would have them do a parachute assault. This is the first opening shot of what the Western forces would do to overthrow the United States government. 3rd Cavalry Regiment attacks to Fort Riley from Fort Hood, and again, they're a Stryker Brigade combat team, and so they're wheeled. They're able to travel on the highways really, really well. And also take note that this is not like 2 days worth of maneuvering. This is probably months of taking how long this conflict would take. So I just wanted to put that caveat in there. But it'd be simultaneously 3rd Cavalry Regiment attacks to Fort Riley, Kansas, and 2nd Ranger Battalion does a parachute assault onto Fort Riley, Kansas. All right, why are they doing this? So this is the Phase 1 Bravo. So 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment secures the AHAs, the ammunition holding areas, and the barracks on Fort Riley, Kansas. And so you may or may not know this, but vehicles, tanks and Bradleys and things like that mechanized infantry and armor divisions have, they don't store the ammunition in the vehicles. They store the ammunition separately in buildings called ammunition holding areas. And so whenever you're going out to the range or something like that, your supply person comes and loads up a bunch of ammo and then takes it out to the Bradleys and the M1 Abrams and things like that. And same thing, the magazines for your rifles and things like that. All the stuff is stored in the arms room, and there's no ammo that's also stored in arms rooms. So if a Ranger Battalion consisting of about 700 Rangers go in and do a parachute assault and take control of the ammunition and the fuel servicing areas, Fort Riley, the vehicles aren't going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And if you had a squad of Rangers to go to each of the barracks buildings and secure the entrances and exits of the barracks, that means the soldiers can't leave the barracks. And they don't have any ammo for the weapons that are in the arms room. And so they are stuck. Now, the movie is violent. The movie is straight up. Nobody is taking any prisoners. No. There's no prisoners being given. Everybody is just killing everybody. So conceivably, if that is true, the soldiers aren't armed. They could be killed while they're sleeping in their barracks. Right. But I'm saying that the Western forces are nicer, and they're just going to secure the barracks. But effectively, what has happened is a division's worth of combat power is in the parking lot, not moving, not armed, and nobody's in them. And we did that first move with the 1 Ranger Battalion. Now, the 3rd Cavalry Regiment, again, is driving up towards Fort Riley, and they're going to go into a blocking position to prevent the envelopment of the Ranger Battalion from 4th Infantry Division from Fort Carson. And so you can see that 3rd Cavalry Regiment has that T-looking icon, and that is the tactical symbol and task of block. And so that's to prevent the envelopment of 2nd Ranger Battalion. The circle around Fort Riley with the circle and the arrow, that's a tactical task of secure. And so again, basically we've just neutralized, and we'll see that later, Fort Riley. Simultaneously in this phase, we have the 7th Infantry Division and the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of 2nd Infantry Division rolling down towards Fort Riley as well. And then 1st Armored Division, all the way from El Paso at Fort Bliss, attacks towards Columbus, Ohio. And then 1st Cavalry Division does a follow and assume on 1st Armored Division. Now, follow and assume means that if 1st Armored Division runs out of steam, then they can go ahead and take the lead and continue the fight. And so that's why we have 2 big heavy hitter divisions that are moving up towards Columbus, Ohio. Now, the enemy, and it seems so weird to call the United States the enemy forces of the Loyalist forces, the 10th Mountain Division is coming down from Fort Drum, New York, and is assuming you see another T, blocking position in Columbus, Ohio. And again, enemy forces are in red and have diamonds. They're diamond-shaped. Friendly forces are rectangles and are in blue, and then neutral forces are squares and they're in green. And so if you look and see the green, again, we don't know anything that the Florida Alliance is doing, and so they're just kind of sitting there. But still, the 82nd Airborne and the 2nd Marine Division, I'm assuming that there are hostilities, and so they're kind of stuck fighting against 3rd Infantry Division mechanized. But that's an assumption because we hear nothing about it during the movie. But again, 10th Mountain is blocking in Columbus, Ohio in order to prevent the envelopment of Washington, D.C. by these armored forces. All right, so Phase 2, 7th Infantry Division and 3rd Cavalry Regiment and 2nd Brigade of the 2nd Infantry Division destroy 4th ID, and that's what that X is over the icon. So they actually attacked and destroyed the 4th Infantry Division, and then the 2nd Ranger Battalion has neutralized the 1st Infantry Division, and that's what that dotted line for the X and the solid line is. And then the 1st Armored Division destroys the 10th Mountain Division, and because that's really not going to be a contest at all, but they run out of steam. And then we get to where the movie is. The front line is in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we come in at the part where on the 4th of July, the 1st Cavalry Division seizes and attacks Washington, D.C. And so this is how I would fight it. Again, there are a ton of combat multipliers that you could spend, months and months and months wargaming this out in a battle like this would be months of planning. But still, if I just concentrate on the big units of how could 1st Cav get from Fort Hood, Texas, all the way to Washington, D.C. without being stopped by mechanized and armor forces that are in the central United States, that's what would be needed to be done.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, tell me how I did in the comments below on whether you would fight this the same way. But I'd be interested because again, this was pretty fun exercise for me. As a paratrooper, we're used to the 82nd Airborne is specifically tasked to do airfield seizures, so to parachute in and take over airports. And I'll be honest, to this day, whenever I walk into an airport, I look around and I'm like, okay, how would I do this? I mean, I've been doing it for so long of airfield seizures to do it. It's a game I play with myself. Okay, so I go into the George Bush International Airport. Okay, how would I take this down? Okay, I go into JFK. Okay, how would I take this down? Anyway, I just think about it. It's just fun to reminisce on this. So yeah, in the comments, tell me how I did, and thanks so much for watching Azimuth Podcast. Please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.